What's up, everybody? Good to see you guys. My name's Taylor Coye. Nice to meet you if I haven't before. Excited to be back. This is awesome. Just to see, how God's still doing stuff here on campus at CSU. It's an incredible thing. Want to quick introduce my family. Classic StuMo talk. You got to talk about your family. So, this is me, in case you couldn't tell. That's my wife, Megan, my son, Jacob, and then my twin baby girls, Stella on the left and then Colette on the right. And as Matt shared, we were part of StuMo. My wife was on staff for 15 years, and I was on staff for 11. Retirement's not quite the word. We're still working. But yes, wrapped up our time on staff. We loved it. It was awesome. So we're back in Oklahoma, doing some other stuff there now, but it's been awesome. Just wanted to say thank you guys for being here. Again, I get post-spring break. There's a lot of other stuff you could do. There's a lot of finals you could prep for, or the paper to write, or whatever you guys got going. So I appreciate you making the time to be here tonight. And so one question that I think we think about often is, right, this idea of faith, right? Trusting God, knowing God, having a relationship with Jesus. Considering those questions, super important, right? Thinking about where do I land with those questions. But if we are someone or we're a person who's made a decision, we're trying to follow Jesus, we're trying to grow in our faith, how do we do that? How do we grow or build our faith? And that's what we're going to talk about tonight, is just what are things or how can we actually continue to build into this relationship? Because a lot of times we think about this decision as a one-time deal. We're like, hey, I've made a decision. I'm going to follow Jesus. Like, I'm in. And that's true. Like, that's awesome. And that's a huge thing. But how do I grow in that relationship? Like any of your friends, right? Take 2 seconds to think about who are some of your closest friends. And then think about why are they your closest friends? And it wasn't probably because at kindergarten, you guys were like, do you want to be best friends? And you both said yes to each other, and then you never spoke again. Right? No one did that. Like, you didn't just have a friend, you go, hey, do you want to be my best friend? Yes, okay, sweet. Wrote it down, checked it off, you're like, all right, see ya, whenever. It's time, it's experience, it took time to reach that point. And so a lot of times we can view the spiritual life and our growth in our relationship with Christ similarly, where we're like, hey, I made that decision, that's a cool thing for me, but I'm off to do this other stuff. I got other things to handle. So how do we build and grow our faith? So we're going to look at Peter's life, one of the guys, one of the 12 that followed Jesus, one of the 12 disciples. And we're going to just look through a couple different passages in the book of Matthew where we see how Peter grows and he builds this trust, this faith with Jesus. And what does that look like? So Peter, again, context of Peter, he was an exciting guy, one of the 12, very close with Christ throughout the course of his ministry. But let's look at a couple different passages real quick and see what it looked like for him interacting. So we're going to look at Matthew 4:18 through 20. This is pretty early on in Jesus' ministry. It's actually right at the beginning. And so this is Jesus, right, walking by the Sea of Galilee. He saw two brothers. So Jesus is starting to call his first disciples. Jesus was 30 years old at this point in time. He was just starting his ministry. So he had been growing in wisdom and stature. That's what we read in the Bible, that Jesus had been developing. But now is the time that he is going to start doing his ministry. He did ministry for 3 years. He died at the age of 33, which he and I are the same age at that point. I'm 33. I'm not 63 or whatever you guys are assuming of me right now. Receding hairlines suck. So while walking by the Sea of Galilee, this is Jesus, he saw two brothers, Simon, who was called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. Immediately, they left their nets and followed him. So let's look at this, right? When we read this, and again, in the context of the whole New Testament, in the context of knowing who Jesus was, it can be really easy to go, well, yeah, it was Jesus. Like, Jesus called them out, and so they went with him. But again, he's not the Jesus we know of right now, right? The context isn't there for Peter and his brother. They've maybe interacted with him before, but they're not super close with Jesus. So for him to call and say, hey, follow me, right? Be a part of what I'm doing. I will make you fishers of men. So Jesus is connecting with them on their terms. They're fishermen. So he uses a very fisherman-friendly phrase. Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. One thing I find really interesting about this is that immediately they left their nets and followed him. Again, when we know who Jesus is and what's going to happen, it's easy to go, well, yeah, it's Jesus. Like you would, of course, drop your nets immediately. If I'm studying the LSC and Jesus came up to me and said, hey, follow me, I would immediately drop my pen, stop studying, and follow him. Right, you guys? No one nodded. Everyone's just like, what? So we see this, but again, what Peter's giving up here is a bigger deal than maybe we're aware of. The idea of him and his brother being fishermen, guess what their dad more than likely did? He was a fisherman, right? In that culture, in that society, at that point of time in history, that is what you did. You did what your family did. So if you were a fisherman, it was because your dad was a fisherman, his dad was a fisherman, his dad was a fisherman, and so on and so forth. So they're not just dropping, this kind of like fun side hustle. They're not drop shipping clothes to people with like a sweet Shopify store. This is like their career, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, do you hear what I'm saying? It's not just a quick, easy thing. This is a big deal that they're just like, done. So again, you guys are all getting degrees in different things. You all have different hopes for what your careers are going to look like. Imagine dropping that 10 years in. You do the GMAT. You pass. You get into med school. You're a doctor. You go through the hell of those 10 years of figuring out how to do that and what you're going to specialize in. It's so difficult. And then Jesus is like, hey, don't do that anymore. Just follow me. And you're like, yeah, let's do that. So dropping this career, it's a very big deal, and it matters a ton. But again, the context, even with that context, immediately they left their nets and they followed him. So we see Peter, even his initial interaction with Jesus, he was willing to take the risk. He was willing to do the hard thing and take that risk and follow Jesus immediately. Let's look a little further into Matthew and just what's going on. So again, context, I won't just initially drop a random verse because this makes no sense out of context. But in Matthew 14, so 10 chapters into, again, Jesus' miracles, the 12 coming together, a lot has happened up to this point. And so the context, even before this passage, is that Jesus has just fed the 5,000. So if you're not familiar with that miracle, there was a huge crowd listening to Jesus preach. And Jesus is like, hey, feed these people. He tells the 12 to feed these people. And they're like, Jesus, we don't have food to feed 5,000 people. And so Jesus, a miracle is performed, and the baskets of bread and fish that they have multiply and multiply and multiply. Everybody gets fed. So this huge miracle has occurred. And think how like hyped you would be in that moment, right? You're like, Jesus says feed the people. You're like, dude, there's just no chance. There's no chance. And you just keep handing out bread. And you're like, dude, this is crazy. You're like looking at your boys. They also have bread in their baskets. You're like, what's going on? And then at the end, you're just like, I'm assuming they're like like just so excited. They're hyped up, and it's cool, and it's fun, and I'm sure it's, again, very faith-building, right? They're like, this is unbelievable. Jesus is who he said he is. Like, this is crazy to look at how Jesus is impacting other people. Jesus, after that, goes away for some solitary time, and he just tells them to go on. And so the guys jump in a boat, and they're crossing this lake, and they're talking, and then this huge storm hits the lake. And there's tons of waves, water's crashing into the boat. Again, high emotional situation here. You just saw this miracle happen. You were there. You witnessed it. You were a part of it, breaking off bread over and over and over again. There's still bread. And now you're like scared for your life. But you're not with Jesus in this moment. He went off. He just told you guys to go ahead. So you're fearful. You're scared. It's another emotional high. You're nervous. What's going to happen? I don't know. And then as you guys are like scared, you were just chest bumping. Now you're like holding onto each other so you don't fall into the water. And you're looking, and there's this like fuzzy thing like out ahead of the water. Like it doesn't super make sense because, again, it's raining. It's you're moving a ton. And you see this little fuzzy figure. And as it approaches, it's like, man, is that a ghost? Like that's one of their first questions. Like, is that a ghost on the water? And they're like, no, I don't think. Again, they're just looking. But again, try to put it's freaky. It's a freaky situation, emotional high, into this scary situation. You're freaking out. You're talking about ghosts. You like just saw Jesus do this crazy miracle, and you're tired. And then you see, and it finally is clear enough, and it's Jesus walking on the water in the middle of this huge storm. And you just got to be like, how is he doing this? What is going on? This is insane. It's crazy. And then he says, hey, do not be afraid. Like that's Jesus' first statement to them when they can actually hear what he's saying. Do not be afraid. And so they kind of, again, in the moment, it's like we're still in the storm. We could still drown. Like you're on top of the water. We're not on top of the water. Easy for you to say, do not be afraid. But Peter's response to Jesus saying that says, hey, Lord, if it's you, like if it is actually you walking on the water, call me out. Like have me come out to the water with you. And Jesus says, come. He says, hey, yeah, come on out. So Peter, again, I'm wearing boots and jeans, but I'm going to do my best to help us understand how this looked. So Peter's in a boat. It's not a canoe. It's not a little paddleboard, cute rom-com thing. It's a boat. Like it's a big boat. It's holding 12 men. You know, like it's not a small thing. And so there's a large ledge. So imagine that. Again, you're standing next to these guys who were just chest bumping hours before, pumped. And now you're like, what is, like again, I still feel like everyone's like pretty creeped out. Jesus is like standing on the water. You've never seen him do that before. You've seen him do other miracles. You've never seen this. And then Peter's like, all right, tell me to come out. He's like, okay. And so then I'm imagining him grabbing like, you know, someone, it's a boat still, it's rocking. There's still this storm going on. And you eventually get your foot up and you, it's like, I don't know if Peter like tried 4 times. I don't know what happened exactly. But he eventually like gets it out there and like it's firm. And he can stand on it. And so he I mean, again, the guys have got to be like, what? Is there acrylic? Acrylic's not a thing. There's none of those like weird prank YouTube channels. This is real life. And so no Mythbusters in this moment. So they're going there and he gets out and I mean, how weird, right? If we're standing in the middle of this deep lake, if you were out on Horsetooth and you just step out onto water. So he gets out and I imagine again, real tentative steps. Dude's got to be freaking out. And he starts to walk towards Christ. Like he sees Jesus out and he starts to, after stepping out, go towards him. And in that moment, again, that's got to be pretty faith building for Peter. It's easy, again, context for us to go, dude, it's Jesus. That's one of his most famous miracles, is to walk on water. But they don't know that. They're living it with him. And sure enough, Peter, despite stepping out and having done the initial hard thing of actually getting onto the water, starts to doubt. He's already taken a step or two, but still has doubt and starts to sink. Starts to sink, which is obviously faith shaking. Like, dude, you just told me I could come out. You asked me to come out here. You said yes. I'm doing it. What's going on? But Jesus grabs him. He saves him. And he says, you of little faith, why did you doubt? Again, he didn't reprimand Peter. He wasn't like, dude, let him drown. He wasn't like, this dude clearly didn't like let it all happen, then turn to the 11 and go, you are my 11. Peter didn't deserve it. No. Jesus, in his loving kindness of his grace on Peter, just like he has grace on you, goes, you of little faith, why did you doubt? Again, think of your own situation. Think of your own, either again, learning more about Jesus, growing in your faith, or having made that decision to follow Christ, wherever you're at today. How did you get to that point? I would guess it wasn't one miracle, and that was it. I'm guessing that maybe you took a step or two, and then, man, you faltered. Or you were more willing to go further into that, and it was hard. Whatever it is, understand that Christ is there for us. But his response, again, is the same response to us. You of little faith, why did you doubt? So these miracles continue to happen. Peter continues to see Jesus do crazy, miraculous things that only the Messiah could do. That when we look in the history in the Old Testament and all of the things that were foretold about this Savior that he is completing, he is doing all of them. And they're seeing that. And it's crazy because we get to Matthew 16, so a couple chapters after this. In Jesus' context, people are starting, there's a murmur, right? There's people, like if there was a yik-yak of the day, people are like, Jesus sucks. You know, like there's suddenly like this dude who's doing this miracle stuff, like now suddenly like he kind of sucks. I think he's kind of weird. People are starting to put there's bad press. And so Jesus is aware of this because he is who he is. And he asks the 12. He turns to his disciples who have been with him for now 2+ years. And he says, who do you say I am? And which is interesting, because again, these guys have been with him for a long time. Please imagine hanging out with someone for 2+ years, being around them in so many different contexts. Think about living with your roommate for 2 years. And then they turn to you and go like, who am I? That'd be kind of weird, right? You're like, dude, whoa. You're you? Like, I don't know. How do I answer that? Jesus turns. Oh, sorry. Peter got out of the boat. Again, he was willing to do it. He took the risk. He said to them, but who do you say that I am? Simon Peter replied, you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. Here is why this is a crazy statement that Peter makes. This, according to most scholars, they would say this is the first time a disciple makes this statement about Jesus, that he is the Messiah, that he is the Son of God, out loud. Maybe they whispered it before, maybe they talked about it before, but in terms of accounts in the Bible, this is the first time that one of the 12 goes, he is the Messiah. He is the Son of God. And so he looks, Peter replies, you are the Christ, Son of the living God. The question I want us to consider is, what had Peter seen to lead him to believe that he was the Christ? What had Peter seen to lead him to believe in this statement that Peter could very, very quickly go, dude, you are who you said you were. You are the Son of God. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Well, we've already looked at 2 of those examples, right? The first time Peter was called, it had nothing to do with, he didn't, in that moment when him and his brother were throwing nets, Jesus didn't go, hey, who am I? He goes, dude, you're the Son of the living God. This is years later. This is tons and tons of time together. This is numbers and numbers of interactions together. And you're looking at it, and you're going, okay, this is crazy. But Peter makes this statement because he has spent time. He has spent relationship. He's developed his relationship with Jesus. He has seen his truth to be true. He has seen applying his word to his life to have effect. He's seen that statement isn't just a statement to make, it's just a reality to state. That he is the Son of the living God. So as we think about this, and how does this apply to us? And there's a number of ways to do this, but the way that we can grow and develop in our faith, when we think about that question, how do I grow in this? So I keep highlighting these and then saying it after the fact. I apologize. He replied. Again, it's more of like the immediacy, the quickness, and how he would do things. But what happens and how this looks is that great risks build great faith. Great risks build great faith. Peter was like a zealous individual. He was very excited about Christ. He wanted to defend Christ. He wanted to be around Christ. And so these years and years spent with him, he took greater and greater risks. Again, giving up his career, giving up being a fisherman, giving up the life that he was going to lead to follow Christ. Man, that's a huge risk. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know exactly what's going to occur in front of us or the next day or the next week. Months and months go on. Chapters of the Bible continue to pass. Then he has this instance of faith growing as it relates to, man, how am I going to step out of this boat? Like, I've just seen Jesus do a crazy miracle. He fed 10,000 plus people. Grows his faith, continues to grow his faith because he continues to, in faith, go out with the basket with just a little bit of fish and a little bit of bread. And he steps out and he sees that miracle occur. And then when Jesus asked the question in front of the 12, it wasn't a resounding, like everybody was like, oh, obviously you're this. It was Peter who said it first. They agreed, right? They all believed that Jesus was who he said he was. But isn't that interesting that these risks, these faith building, these faith growing steps that he had taken was why he was so quick to answer that question in chapter 16. Why he was so much faster to go, yeah, you're the Son of the living God. Like, no doubt. I know exactly who you are and what you are, which is awesome. Because we want to be like Peter, right? That should be a goal of ours, is to have that similar type of approach to Peter and his life, because those great risks continue to build great faith. I'll pause here for a second, have McKenzie come up and share her story about what that looked like for making that decision to follow Christ. So give it up for McKenzie.
Hello. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is McKenzie Kelsay, and I'm currently a sophomore here at CSU, and I'm also a member of Chi Omega. I'm so excited to have the opportunity to be able to share my testimony with you all. Taylor's talk resonates a lot with my personal testimony as to how taking a step of faith to pursue a deeper relationship with Christ has dramatically changed my life. From a young age, I grew up within a family who all collectively had an understanding of who Christ was, having an occasional attendance at Sunday services, but making it a priority to be at church on Christmas and Easter. Although having knowledge of who Jesus was, I was never the individual to tell you that I had a personal and deep relationship with Christ. Growing up, my family experienced several hardships. More specifically, the one that comes to the forefront of my mind was my mom being diagnosed with colon cancer when I was 13 years old. Our family not having the understanding or knowledge as to what this diagnosis meant for our family, our world was completely shattered. This diagnosis created a false understanding for me of exactly who Christ was, doubting the goodness and the truth in the midst of chaos and division within our family. Fast forward to my freshman year of college. I felt lost, empty, and uncertain as to what college had for me as I was grieving the loss of my grandfather, moving away from home, and was no longer playing lacrosse, which once marked my identity. Within my first semester of college, I began to seek out what would make me feel worthy. I dove straight into the party scene, all while chasing success and grades and attention from guys. This was all within my pursuit to begin to gain my footing here at CSU. I was living for the next best thing. Within the midst of chaos and questioning my purpose here at CSU, I met a girl named Katie who shared the incredible news of Jesus with me. In September of 2022, I made the decision to surrender my life and place my trust in Jesus. Although this moment for me was incredibly encouraging, knowing that I had been made new within God's image, I was still living a divided life. After having experienced several setbacks within my faith throughout the course of my freshman year, I ultimately took the step of faith to go to Coye to further my relationship with Christ. I soon realized for several years following my mom's cancer diagnosis that I was living within a false understanding of who Christ was. I slowly began to rebuild my understanding and knowledge of Christ through a deep and personal relationship. Today, my family and I stand here as a testimony to God's faithfulness, having a mom who has been fully healed from cancer. He has redeemed the darkest parts of my life and even my understanding of him. My life now overflows with grace, love, and happiness. Through Christ alone, I have found freedom, healing, and hope. If there's one thing that I would like to leave you here tonight with, is what will your next step of faith be? I encourage you to all take the chance and roll the dice on Christ, just as I did, and see what he will do in your life. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Thank you for sharing. McKenzie nailed it, right? Thinking about how do we take that risk? What is that next step for us? Because again, we can always hear good talks or hear a great sermon or listen to a great sermon, whatever, watch a good YouTube video, whatever you want to do, and go, man, that was awesome. And that's how we view these things. We just go, man, that was good. Man, good word. That was awesome. And that's it. And that's how we view it. We just go, that was good, and it's done. But how can we take this idea of growing in our faith, recognizing that, man, it takes faith for that initial decision to follow Christ, just like it takes faith to continue to grow in that relationship with him. How can we do that? What risks? What are things around you that maybe Jesus is asking you to take that risk? Is that an individual that you need to talk to about the gospel? Is that for you to make a personal decision to follow Jesus? Whatever that is for you, I just want to encourage you guys, man, let's be like Peter. Let's do that. Let's take that risk and see what happens. Let's see what God does with that space. I think for a lot of us in our natural comfort zones is we want to do whatever we are most comfortable with. And if we were to visualize our comfort zones, it's like saran wrap against our body, right? It's not like this huge, like we all like to think we're real open-minded, willing to do other stuff. Like we are like, I want to do what I want to do, And if you ask me to do something outside of that, I don't agree with you. Like, it's just like we have this thing, we hold real tight our opinion of what we think should happen. Man, we got to make room for Jesus. Do something out of your comfort zone. So what is a risk that Jesus is asking you to take? Are you living like Peter? Another question to consider. Man, are you building a great faith? If you've made that decision, amazing. That is an incredible thing to celebrate. But how are you continuing to build into that foundation? Again, guys, even being 9 months out of working in ministry full time, working in oil and gas, working in some technology stuff, you guys have so much time. I know you don't feel like it. I know you've got schedules and you've got work and you've got other stuff. But without the responsibilities of like a family or a spouse or a job or other things that are maybe pressing you every single day, but you've got a work schedule here, you've got a calendar you have, you have social things you're expected to be at. Those are good things, and you should do those things. But take advantage of the time. Take advantage of what's in front of you. Again, Coye, if you're thinking about that, obviously I'm a huge fan of that. But if you have a summer where you can do that, you should, because you're not going to have summers like that ever again, where you can take 10 weeks, 9 weeks, and give it to one thing and go, hey, I want to grow in this. And there's something about being away and doing something different that can be huge for you and being more of a platform builder and growing, taking that great risk to build great faith. And then lastly, just go for it, right? Try. Do something to continue to grow in your faith. If that's getting into the Word with a regular basis, find a partner and hold each other accountable. Hey, I want to try to read the Bible for 7 days. Will you read the Bible with me for 7 days? And you guys text, hey, this stuck out. Where you're reading the same thing with them. Whatever you want to do, take a step and see how you can continue to build a great faith. It's awesome. Another thing I'd encourage you guys to do that's not a point on here is just to look back. Have some retrospective time and look back on your own journey up to this point and go, how did I get here? What were steps of faith that really had big impacts on my life? How did God use that? What happened as a result? Celebrate that. Be grateful to God for those things. And then go, okay, how do I do that again? What's another instance where I could take that kind of step of faith? So I want to encourage you guys. Again, I love you guys. I don't know everybody here. I will forever love CSU StuMo and what we're doing here. And so I want to help you do this. And again, if you have questions, I'll be around tonight. But yeah, let's be those people. Let's be like Peter. Let's be people who are willing to take great risk to build great faith. Pray with me. Lord, we come to you right now just to thank you for your word. Lord, thank you for the example of Peter in our own lives. And Lord, I do just ask that you would use tonight in our own lives and help us, give us inklings and pushes in whatever direction we need to be going, Lord. If there's risks to take or steps to take, whatever it is, Lord, I pray that we would do it. I pray that we would follow that up. I pray we'd even talk to somebody else about it for accountability so we could see you move. Lord, we're grateful for your son and his sacrifice for us. Lord, I pray you continue to use the students and the staff here on campus at CSU to continue to reach more students, not only here at CSU, but across the globe. In your son's name we pray. Amen.